there's nothing that person can say to you that will satisfy your core wounds. And I say this specifically for anybody out there who is struggling with self-worth in relationships. I think this can apply to any kind of relationship, but I'm going to approach it more from romantic relationships. The questions that you might have about why someone is not showing up the way you want them to, or why maybe they were showing up at some point the way you wanted them to and then switched up on you, those questions are not going to be answered and not going to be satisfying if they are answered, because the questions are really more about you at the end of the day. And I want to talk about this in more depth because I think many people will stay in relationships, especially when the relationships are not fulfilling or satisfying at a certain point. Again, maybe they were in the beginning, but now they've changed. They'll stay in those relationships because they have the question of why is this not working? What about me has made this person change? Or what about me is not good enough for this person to stay? Or whatever. There's a question there. There's something there that's keeping you hooked. This is just one aspect of it. There's probably so many things that are keeping anybody stuck in a relationship that is unaligned. But I'm talking specifically about this. So maybe this resonates with you if you've experienced this or are currently experiencing it. There are certain questions that you have in your mind, whether consciously or subconsciously, that you want answered. And you think that the answer to these questions is going to make you finally feel content and free and liberated from this unhealthy attachment to a person. There is no answer that's going to do that for you because it's not really about the other person. It's about you. The thing that's keeping you stuck in this dynamic, waiting for these answers, is your core wounds. Those core wounds have a certain belief about you that is reinforced every time you find yourself in these kinds of dynamics again, and every time you stay in them. And sometimes it is easier to use those core wounds and those core beliefs as the answer that you're looking for to feel validated or justified as to why something's not working out. It's sometimes easier to hear or to think that you're going to hear, to wait to hear that you're not good enough and that's why something's not working out, than it is to potentially hear an answer from someone that has nothing to do with your worth, because a lot of the time, most of the time, it doesn't. And accept that it's just that this person cannot show up a certain way, or this person is just not who you thought they were. They've just shown themselves to be different. It's harder sometimes to accept that, especially if you're attached to a fantasy of a person, an idea of them. You wanted a certain kind of life with them, and now you don't have it because they're showing you who they really are. And I don't even mean this to be like malicious on their part. It doesn't mean that they're doing this to actively hurt you. It's just you're seeing who they are, and they're different than what you thought they would be, or who they showed you they were in the beginning, because of their own core wounds, right? Some people will show up a certain way because they think this is how I have to show up to be loved or approved of or whatever, as we do as well. And that facade will slowly crack over time. It always does, because your authenticity will always seep through unless you're very, very good at hiding it, which some people are. But I think most of the time people aren't very good at it, or it just shows in ways that they don't recognize, right? Maybe they think they're keeping up a good facade, but they're not. It's easier to accept on your end when you're in a dynamic like this, especially if you're attached to the idea or a fantasy of a person. It's easier to accept that, no, it's me. I know it's me. It's something about me. I'm not good enough, so I can change, or I can do this, or if they just told me what it was. It reinforces that core negative belief you have. It kind of, scratches that itch almost, in a sense. It picks at the wound, and that it has a weird satisfaction to it sometimes when it comes to our self-worth. That's easier to accept than to say, oh, this person is just different than who I thought they were. Or I thought they were somebody else. I didn't really see who they were in the beginning, and blaming yourself for your lack of, accurate perception of a person. That's not as easy as saying, yeah, it's me. It's my fault. Especially because if you were raised in an environment throughout your childhood where you were made to feel like you are the scapegoat, the reason why things didn't work or didn't function. You had to fix yourself. You had to be better, change, right? This is probably where your perfectionism tendencies come from. You had to do better. You had to change. And so that's the core wound, right? That's the core belief that if something's not working, or if you're not being chosen or shown up for, it's because you're not doing something. You need to be better. You need to do better. And so when this is, being reflected in a romantic relationship in your adulthood, the same narratives or stories are circulating your mind, right? You think that they apply to this as well. And so you will use this scenario to reinforce these beliefs because it's easier to understand that, because it feels more familiar to understand that, oh yeah, it's me. I'm not good enough. My self-worth is not, or my worth is not there. And you have like this very limited view of yourself. That's easier because it's familiar. It's much easier than just accepting that this person is not aligned with you at the end of the day, something that is completely out of your control. You can't control that. That's scary. There's an uncertainty to that. It's so much easier to feel like you're in somewhat control by believing that it's you. So if you are in a relationship with someone and you're there because you have this question in the back of your mind, or certain questions, why is this not working? What have I done wrong? What can I do better? What is it about me that is making this person not act the way I want them to or need them to feel safe and secure? It's not really about them. It's about you. All those questions you have to ask to yourself. Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? Why do I feel like I have to do something better? What do I believe I would have to do better? The answers you get from those questions will reveal to you the parts of you that you think aren't good enough, or the parts of you that you think you have to improve on. Now, on the one hand, it can sometimes be good to be aware of these things, right? Maybe there are certain things about you that you recognize you could improve on to have better connections and relationships with people. Of course, nothing wrong with that. All of the work I do is about this self-awareness and holding yourself accountable. So maybe the answer to that question of why am I not good enough to be chosen, or why is this person not showing up for me, or whatever, maybe an answer to that is I'm not showing up for me. I don't believe someone would do that for me because I don't do it for me. I'm not sticking to my word. So how can I expect someone else to stick to their word, or whatever? Then yeah, that is so valid and you should listen to that. In other cases though, the answer to that question might be because I'm just inherently awful, or I'm just inherently unworthy as a person. I'm ugly. I'm this. I'm that. Like, it's these kind of generic or general answers to these questions that aren't really tied to something substantial, right? They are just purely your core wounds, the things that you were conditioned to believe are true about you, when they don't have to be. The only reason they're true is because you continue to feed into them. And the longer you stay in a relationship that is unaligned, trying to get answers that feed those questions, those beliefs, those self-limiting beliefs, the more you'll believe them, the more you're reinforcing them, because you're showing yourself that you should be in a dynamic that doesn't work. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense. And again, hold yourself accountable, be mindful of the things that maybe you do know you want to improve, but you feel like I'm not good enough to improve in these ways. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Then yeah, that's a different story altogether. But when it comes to feeling like there is some specific answer this person can and should give you about why they are not showing up the way you need them to, it doesn't exist. It's not there. Because even if they did give you an answer, it probably wouldn't be very satisfying. Because really what's satisfying is the unspoken things, right? It's the silence. That's what really is keeping you hooked. It's the not knowing. It's the part of you that is filling in the gaps and the blanks with your own self-limiting beliefs. That's what's keeping you there. And you think that this person will reinforce them. And it becomes this kind of self-flagellation that feels ironically good to participate in because of these self-limiting beliefs. It's almost like you want to be hurt emotionally by this person telling you, yeah, it's that you're not good enough. Obviously, consciously, you don't want that. Nobody does, I'm sure. Or most people don't. But subconsciously, there's a part of you that because you believe it so deeply, it's what you want to hear. Subconsciously, you want to hear it to validate that feeling. And then you can say, yeah, see, I knew it. I always knew. I'm in control. I understand everything. I don't feel uncertain about why things are happening the way they are. And really, the way to heal this, not that it can be perfectly healed in that sense, but the way to work through this is to accept the uncertainty of things not working out because they're just not aligned. Not because there's anything you can or should be doing differently, because you're not perfect. You never will be perfect. And you can't control everything. You can't control a person either. The way you show up is not going to change a person necessarily. Sometimes it can, sure. If you, say, want to practice vulnerability, opening up space for that can encourage another person to be vulnerable too, sure. And that is kind of how interdependent relationships work. But both people have to be willing to do that. But you can't control another person. If they're not able to or willing to, there's nothing you can do to change that. So it's not really about you being different or better or changing or whatever. It's more about, why do I believe these things about me? Why do I need to hear something like that about me to feel finally satisfied about why this isn't working? Those are the things I think are more important to ask yourself and will give you more insight into how to move through this, right? So accepting the uncertainty of a circumstance. It's just not working because it's not working. There doesn't always need to be another answer to this. Sometimes you might get one that is helpful. Okay, it's not working because we're incompatible in these specific ways. Great. Now you know that. Or it's not working because, maybe you aren't being as open or supportive or whatever. And yes, you can improve in those ways, of course. But sometimes there is no answer because it's just not aligned. Maybe that person just doesn't even know how to show up in a relationship in the way you need them to. They've never been able to do it. So it's not really about you at the end of the day. But if you keep hoping or believing that there is some answer that'll finally free you of whatever it is that's keeping you stuck here, it doesn't exist. All it's going to do is serve your ego. Your ego's need to protect you by sometimes hurting you, ironically. And that doesn't feel good. And it's not kind to you to do that to yourself, because all it will do is reinforce those negative beliefs and keep you stuck in these dynamics that don't serve you, that aren't aligned with you and don't feel good. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it helped you understand a bit of why you might be stuck in certain dynamics or relationships, hopefully. If this resonates with you, of course. I'm sure it's not going to resonate with everybody. It's not, one and done type of situation when it comes to relationships that don't feel aligned, but maybe this is one part of it. I like to look at all of this as fragments, and you can look at them all together, or you can look at them separately and kind of pick and choose what feels most aligned or authentic in this moment for you. So hopefully this helped. Hopefully it gave you some insight, some clarity. If you want to talk about these things in more depth with me, feel free to book a one-to-one call over on my website. If you want to read about these things, I write Substack essays. I have one about this as well, specifically. So if you want to read more in depth about this topic, follow me over on there. And follow me on Instagram and TikTok for my short form content. Other than that, thank you for being here, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.